Fighters here, and today we've got a very special guest, Matt Walton of XFC. Owns one of the biggest promotions in Australia. It's got the best reputation for looking after their fighters, and they're based out of Queensland. So welcome, Matt, mate. How are you? Haven't seen you for about a month. I think XFC was 3 to 4 weeks ago, was it?
Yeah, mate, I was actually only speaking to somebody about it today. You know, it's been 25 days, you know, almost a month since that show. So it just shows how quickly the sport travels along.
Yeah, so obviously anybody that follows our page knows that I went up there and I was well looked after by Matt. So thank you for that, and thanks for your time today. And I really want to get out there. What a great guy you are. So, mate, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, about your family, your beautiful wife in the background, and we've already spoken. You're batting well out of your average, but we'll leave that for another show. And I know you've got kids, mate, so tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, nice, yeah. So in my mid-30s, I look a little bit older than that, though. I've had a tough life. But, obviously, married to a beautiful, very caring wife who... most people that anyone knows about the fight game, it definitely consumes your life. So she's definitely my biggest support. I've got 2 little boys. I've got a 5-year-old and a 1.5-year-old, and they're both just incredible, mate. I couldn't have asked for 2 better boys. So, so outside of that, big family man, spend as much time with my kids as possible. And the one thing I love about this job is it lets me do that. And then outside of fighting and promoting, I'm a prison officer. So I work in the prisons 2 days a week. So just as my bit, as much time consuming as running the show is, I do have my fair share of spare time. So something I've always wanted to do is work in the prison. So yeah, I'm an officer for one of the protection prisons up in Queensland here. Who's
harder to deal with, a fighter or a prisoner?
Well, I spent a year at a women's prison, and that was by far the most challenging year in my life. Going from a women's prison to now looking after fighters and a men's prison, the women's prison was definitely the hardest challenge of my life.
Wow.
Very good.
Matt, so you mentioned, man, being in the fight game, and whether it's on the promotional side, whether it's you are a fighter, whether it's in, on our side with the media, like you said, it definitely consumes you. It's just... maybe it's like a passion that we all kind of share, it's just something that ends up consuming every facet of your life. And most of us, and I heard a rumor that, most of us kind of dip our toes into the sport itself and actually practice some stuff. So I heard that you actually you roll around, or, you do a little practicing yourself. Is that true?
Yeah, a little bit. Unfortunately, I'm in that trap where, being a promoter, it's kind of tough to be associated to any one gym. As soon as I did buy the show, I jumped out of my affiliation with a gym. You don't want any conflicts of interest happening. That being said, it was probably one of the best things to have happened to my jiu-jitsu game. Now that I get the chance to go and train at a different gym every week, I'm introduced to new coaches and new ways of thinking about jiu-jitsu or MMA or striking or any part of the business, and constantly having a new, fresh breed of training partners every week has definitely seen my jiu-jitsu game go to another level as well. That being said, it is tough when you're only training once a week or maybe once a fortnight. The energy levels aren't there, and I normally find that the mental side of the game slows down a little bit as well. Outside of that, I'm a bit of a jiu-jitsu tragic, been training for about 10 years now, and probably started, when UFC 1 kicked off. I enjoyed watching it that much and talking to every single person about it. Yeah. But one day I sat back and said, well, I can't just talk about it. I need to be able to actually know what it's like, So I probably started training in MMA first, did that for a couple of years. And then from there kind of worked out what I could and couldn't do in the sport. And then just started concentrating on the jiu-jitsu side of things.
I was a bit the same. I worked out what I couldn't do, and I couldn't fight. So that pretty much ended there.
Yeah, nice.
So back to XFC, mate. You've obviously purchased the longest running show in Australia. Yep. What gravitated you to becoming a promoter? You're obviously coming up to your 40th show. What gravitated you to that?
Yeah, so like I said, I was going through that stage where I was training and all those other bits. I wanted to get heavily involved in MMA, and I wanted to become an official. So I reached out to a whole bunch of shows to say, look, I'm keen to become an official, a judge, a ref. What do I need? What do you want me to do to start qualifying for that? A really, really good friend of mine, unfortunately, he's passed away now, but Junior Togia, one of the most incredible people you'll ever meet in your life, got me in touch with a guy called Matt Cooper, who ran a show called Rise. Now, Rise was kind of like your up-and-coming amateur type show. From there, I was able to work out in the backstage with them, getting the guys wrapped and gloved and ready and taped and signed off. And I just loved it. I loved the mental side of the game. You'd see these young kids coming in, turning up on the night. First thing in, as soon as they walk through the door, they're really confident. And then all of a sudden the fight gets closer and closer and they start getting paler and clammy and sweating. And then the fight happens and then the fight finishes. And just seeing that constant circle of emotions, I loved it. From there, I was lucky enough to go from Rise to then start working for Justin at XFC. Once again, looking after his backstage. And I've told this story a million times, but when I first started with Justin, there was like 10, 15 people working at the back. My second show, there was 6 or 7 people. My third show, there was 2 people. And, by the fourth show, it was just myself. So every show that I worked with Justin, I gradually built his confidence. And then from there, it was literally, Matt, here's the back of house, and he never came back there again. So from there, I was lucky enough to, have a really good relationship with Justin. And keep in mind, there were 3 or 4 other shows that I could have worked for as well, but there was no one else in the game that cared so much about the fighters and the progression of the sport in Australia. So I just was gravitationally pulled towards him, and then we just stuck it out. And I remember one day he was messaging me saying, and I was messaging back and forth saying, look, what if we did this? What if we did that? And he just opened up and said, well, I'm thinking of selling the business. And from there, I'm a salesperson, I've always been in sales and management roles and running businesses. And I just thought, this show has got such incredible momentum. If I'm going to start promoting, I don't want to start fresh. Anyone that wants to get good at this sort of game needs that momentum, and XFC had the best momentum. So it basically went from there. Justin was ready to move on and look after his kids and spend more time with his kids. So I jumped on the ship and right place at the right time.
Matt, so Wayne kind of touched on it. So the 40th show is coming up next year, right? So what's that mean to be in the position you're in? It's such a big milestone for you, right? I mean, it's got to be, that's huge. I guess tell us, what are your thoughts, and I guess maybe even more importantly, the next 40 shows. Where do you see yourself after this?
Yeah, it's a really tricky one. I've never been, for example, this is just how quick the sport runs. My favorite number is 33. I was a Scottie Pippen fan in the basketball Michael Jordan days, and 33 has been my favorite number. And I remember just celebrating the fact that we were doing XFC 33. Wow. And now we're already talking about 39, 40, 41, 42. It just how quickly it happens. So in terms of thinking about XFC 40, it's not even a number that's registering for me. It's just the next show. Where I see what I look forward to is, for example, the last show and the show before that. How incredible were they, and how do we top it? Yeah. So it's kind of like the cliched sort of story that we just keep going show by show. The next show is the one that we concentrate on. So that's still massive for us, though. 2018 was a huge year for us. I reckon we probably did the 3 biggest cards of the year just on XFC. So how do we top that? It's almost depressing to think about how do we top 2018. But we have some awesome fighters coming back, like your Isaac Harmons, your Michael Tapows, some huge names that are about to jump back in the sport after layoffs through to injuries. So it's going to be pretty easy to top 2018 when you see the people coming back. Where do I see us next year? I think a couple of digital changes. We talk about digital contracts, digital things for our sponsors and our suppliers and the people, like online ticketing systems. We've got some pretty cool digital platforms coming for our fighters very soon as well. So that'll be released hopefully in a couple of days' time. And then outside of that, I think Brisbane is really looking for that polished venue. I absolutely love the Mansfield Tavern. And Wayne, you would have seen, and you'll probably admit as well, that it's like the ugly sister, but there is no venue in Australia that goes off like the Mansfield Tavern. Unfortunately, where it misses out on points is some of these highlight videos, and there's it's not the best looking venue. So where I think I see ourselves in the coming year is trying to iron out a venue. I still never think we'll leave the Mansfield, but if it means doing one show here or one show there, just to move some things around, that's probably our platform of where we want to see improvements for next year.
Matt, it may be the ugly sister, mate, but it's the loud sister.
It's ridiculous, isn't it? It just goes off. It's deafening. I love it.
Yeah.
Hey, so you brought up digital platforms. It's crazy. We're in a time now to where finally it's been years where if you weren't on pay-per-view, you were kind of lost in the shuffle, right? Whereas now there's DAZN, there's Fight TV, there's Flow Combat. We have all these avenues for pretty much anybody not named UFC or Bellator now can actually get their content out to to more people than ever. I guess maybe explain. I guess was that what you were referring to as far as like things like something like that, as far as like getting your stuff out, to maybe like bigger digital platforms and things of that nature?
So we are currently on like an online streaming platform. Yeah. We have spoken to like pay TV companies before, and we've spoken to UFC Fight Pass. Yeah. UFC Fight Pass have got some things in place where they want you to do a certain number of shows a year. They own the content. Yeah. I like being able to when a fighter says, "Oh, my mum wants to watch the show," or my dad wants to watch the fight. Yeah. What's the easiest way to do it? Yeah. And so that kind of put us off UFC Fight Pass, that mum and dad and uncles and aunties and brothers and sisters had to have UFC Fight Pass to be able to watch their relatives' fights. So we stepped away from Fight Pass. There were shows like Foxtel, big big pay TV channels that were after our content as well. Yeah. In terms of the landscape of where we're at the moment, we're not quite ready to make that jump. What I was probably referring to before is one thing that I love about XFC is I think we've really turned it into a business. Now, what I mean by that is that, most shows and most promoters might see a business in MMA as in who can make the most amount of dollars and who can squeeze the most out of fighters or, cheapen the most contracts. What I mean by turning us into a business is that, like I said, we've now got, online contract signings. Yeah. So I don't need a fighter now to go and get to his computer, print out his contract, scan it and send it back to me. We've got a platform now where they can get their fighter contract sent to their mobile phone and they can sign it on their phone. Wow. Our ticketing system's all online now. That we've got a lot of things online now. Yeah. One thing we're just about to sign off on though is an XFC Fighter app. So I want to streamline everything that our fighters deal with in terms of MMA. And if I could tell you the amount of questions I get leading up to fight week, it would blow you away just how often my phone buzzes. And half the time they've got this information, but it's not in one central location. So in a couple of days' time, we're about to actually launch an XFC app, where as soon as you ask me a question to say, "Oh, hey Matt, what weight is welterweight at?" I'll be able to turn back to them and say, "It's in the app. It's in the app. Have you checked it?" Or they'll turn around and say, "What time is the weigh-ins and where's it at?" "Guys, it's in the app. Have you pressed the weigh-in button?" Things like that. Or "Hey, just want to double check about the rules." "Guys, it's in the app." So every single question now that they'll possibly want to ask me, I can refer them back to their XFC Fighter app, and all the information will be there. So hopefully fighters, when they've got the choice of who do they fight on, they'll turn around and say, "Well, I tell you what, XFC is so seamless from start to finish. Yeah. I have all the information in front of me." Even things like commentators, the questions that we ask them before the fight. So our commentators have got content. Yeah. There's a form on the app. They'll get a notification saying your questions are due, and they can just fill it in. And then that form just gets submitted to us. There's even something we're building on it now too, where if I need a certain photo for a poster, there'll be a part in the app where they'll get a notification and there'll be an example of the photo will pop up on their screen in a certain pose. And then it'll say, "Are you ready for your photo?" Press the button and it'll turn the camera app on their phone. And then it'll take the photo of them and then they can just send it straight back on the app. So little things like that I don't know of any other MMA company in the world that's actually doing something like this. And we're about to...
Brother, I would trademark that like pronto.
That's right.
Seriously.
That's right, yeah. So it's happening in a couple of days.
Wow.
Fantastic, mate. That sounds, exciting. So I want to talk about the XFC brand and what it stands for. So there's so many people out there, and they're good promotions. Obviously, I'm not aligned to anybody, but the XFC brand, what does it stand for, mate?
I hope that it stands for that next level. We see it all the time where fighters might have had 3 or 4 fights on another promotion, and then they jump onto an XFC card, and just the level of competition just goes to a whole nother level. And the funny thing is we're probably talking about the same sort of fighters that have been on other shows. But like I mentioned before, when you turn up at the Mansfield and you've got 1,500 people screaming down and they're literally 2 feet away from you, it pushes fighters to that next level. So the fighters that would normally might have been pretty average on another show take that next step up on when they come to our show because they know it's a bigger platform. So, and like I said, XFC, when Justin owned it, was the first show to introduce things like doctors and medicals and contracts. So that's what we stand for. We paved the way in terms of fighter safety. And ensuring that these fighters had a safe platform to operate on. So we will never forget those things that Justin brought into the industry. And as I said, that's why we continued things like these apps, where they do have access to their medicals and their rules, and anything they could possibly have questions and concerns about is all at their fingertips. So that's always what I think about with XFC and where we stand for. We like to go to that next level. If a show's doing something well, what have we done better than it? Or if we aren't, why aren't we doing it? So we always want to be the perfectionists. And yeah, once again, above and all, we want an incredible experience. We want the fighters to have an amazing experience and constantly want the fans to have a great experience and the media a great experience and everyone have a great experience. And if it comes at our own costs, we're happy to invest.
Good answer, Matt.
What's your favorite part of the whole I guess what's the best way to word this? There's, you have the promotion, you have the marketing, you have dealing with the fighters, you have all the legal stuff, you have all the venue stuff, you have all these different facets of what you do. What's your favorite part of the whole process? Let's say from, I don't know, the day you book a venue for the show all the way to, the fight's over, the night's over.
Yeah. I'll be honest, this is a really, really tough gig, and if I was to say that there was a bunch of things to choose from, I'd be lying. Like, it is a really stressful, time-consuming, energy-sapping job, but we love it. That's why we do it.
Yeah.
I'd probably say the most enjoyable part of the night is probably when we get about 4 or 5 fights deep into the card, and that's when I realise, that the venue's full, people are here, people enjoying themselves, they're getting their drinks and their food, and I can see the back of house lined up with people wrapped and gloved and they're coming through and the production's working, all those other bits and pieces. So probably about 3 or 4 fights deep is when I really start to enjoy the show. And that's kind of like that line where I realise, whatever happens, happens. So it's anything from this point in is out of my control.
Yeah.
So funnily enough, that's probably when I enjoy it, when it's out of my control. I upset a bunch of people, and I come fight night, I'm so adamant on wanting that perfect experience for the fighters, the crowd, and the officials, and everyone that's there, that I really do push the limits in terms of getting stuff from everybody. So once again, like I said, when that 3 or 4 fight, mark passes, that's when I realise, we're in a groove now, it's happening. Yeah. Sit back and enjoy it, because more than likely I've probably spent about $50,000 for my own seat. I might as well sit back and enjoy the show, you know what I mean? So why not?
I can vouch for that, Matt, because I think at the last XFC, I looked over at you about 3 fights in, and it was the first time I'd actually seen a genuine smile. And you looked over at me and you give me a thumbs up, and I thought, okay, he's relaxed now, mate. I'll continue that question, though. What's your least favourite part of the whole, running this whole promotion? What's the least favourite?
Sure. Probably it's a double-edged sword, because matchmaking was really enjoyable. It's kind of like it was a really mental side of the game, and it's that cool little mental Tetris. When you get that right fit and you release the poster and just it blows up. So it was a double-edged sword. I love that, but I hated it because once again it was so time-consuming. And these fighters, they work and they train. So normally you would get a message from them at 10, 11 o'clock at night when you're about to go to bed saying they're jumping on another show or they're injured. So that was probably my most hated part of the business, which you could probably say that Brian Ebersol saved XFC. Having Brian Ebersol now as our matchmaker is by far and away the greatest thing that we've ever done. That guy is so phenomenal and a wealth of experience. He's having conversations with fighters that I could never have. On the last show, for example, this is what it means to have Brian Ebersol as a matchmaker. On our last show, we had a gentleman that was pulling out because of a bad back. It wasn't a horrendous injury, but it was just kind of limiting his training and that sort of thing. Without me even knowing it, Brian rang this kid and told him, with the bad back, these are 3 or 4 exercises you can do. These are 5 or 6 techniques that work with a bad back. He was able to have these conversations to get this guy back on the radar to wanting to fight again. And only someone with close to 100 professional fights and been there and done that can have those conversations. So Brian definitely saved XFC, because I'm not sure how many more shows I could have done, dealing with that sort of stress without Brian coming on board. Now that I've got that off my shoulders, probably the part I least like about the show, once again, is fight day, from about, 3 or 4 o'clock to that 3 or 4 fight step.
Right.
Because you're constantly waiting for fighters to turn up. Is there rain going to happen? Are people just going to stay home? Are they just going to catch the pay-per-view instead of buying a ticket at the door? You know what I mean? Have we made a mistake with the floor plan? Like I said, our fighter's going to turn up. So that's probably my most stressful time of the night. And as I said, it's from about that 3 or 4 p.m., did the bus pick up the travelling fighters, this and that. And like I said, that's the stressful part, because 3 or 4 months worth of planning literally comes down to 4 hours on the night. And it's so stressful getting that timing right. But we really do have the best back of house team as well. And it's gotten to a point where the last couple of shows, they've hardly heard from me. Pretty much like Justin. I just said at the start of the show, Justin used to hound me and everyone else, and then he kept cutting back in terms of how often he came out the back. I'm now in that position now with our fight show where I can kind of leave it to those guys, and they're taking that stress off me.
Good stuff.
So this is a tough question, and I know that you might not be able to answer it, and I think I might reword it, but I guess
him answer.
Make him answer. Because Wayne knows the question. I guess in your entire reign, who's your favorite fighter to step into an XFC cage? And if that's you don't want to pick and choose, if you don't want to answer that, I understand. But either your favorite fighter to step into a cage, or who's the fighter that when you see on the card, you're like, you're good. You're like, this guy's gonna show up. He's gonna bang. He's gonna, he's gonna show up 100%. Maybe that's the easier answer for you. I don't know, but
it's definitely tough, and I've been caught out before with Facebook posts about calling people's names out and saying I like certain people, so it's pretty tough.
Yeah.
I guess the way I can answer it is, when we bought the business, we had a list of names that we wanted on the roster.
Yeah.
Isaac Hardman, Bevan O'Malley, and like guys like David Butt. Those 3 names, when we bought the business, I was like, who do I love? Jai Bradney. I was the biggest fan of Jai Bradney when I first started watching this sport. So your Isaac Hardmans, your Bevan O'Malley's, your David Butts, and your Jai Bradney. I always wanted those guys on the card, and I chase them, and we finally ticked them off. After 2 years, I finally got David Butt on the show. I finally got Jai Bradney on the show. It's once again, some names, some people might be upset now. For example, I just said Bevan O'Malley, but Jackson Small just beat Bevan. When we bought the show, Jackson Small was still an amateur, and fighting on different shows. Now, when Jackson's name pops up, I'm like, oh my God, that guy's just won our Ben Crombie Award the last 2 shows in a row, which is our most prestigious award. It's got nothing to do with the performance. It's all about the professionalism, the way they hold themselves, ticket sales, social media, those bits and pieces. And Jackson's really stepped it up to that next level. And I've got so many favourites. There's a girl called Tuffy, Tali Cassidy, that I used to train with her. And this girl has attitude. If you're going to watch a girl, she loves the fight game and she lives it up. So I'm glad we got her on the show, 1 or 2 shows ago. I've got heaps of favourite fighters. Some of those names I dropped before is pretty much where it's at. Gustavo Falsaroli, he was our first main event. He won the belt on our first ever show. I've been a jiu-jitsu guy. I've followed that guy's career for 10, 15 years. Yeah. And to have him on the show, he only got the chance to fight for us once because he was injured afterwards. But things like that, I think when our time comes to sell the show ourselves, when I look back and say, we had guys like Falsaroli and those sorts of boys on the show, that's what I'll be really proud of.
The reason I wanted that question asked is because it is tough, and not all interviews can be, rainbows and unicorns. So
Yeah.
I'd like to ask enough questions, mate.
I'll be really annoyed because once the interview's over, I will have 30 names on my tongue. I'm like, why didn't I say that person's name? Like, you get Craig Callaghan's and Joel Fahey's. Like, I love those kids. So I'll be kicking myself that I didn't mention a whole bunch of other names by the time the interview's over.
See, I was trying to be considerate, man. I was trying to think about you. Okay.
Thanks, boys.
Aussies aren't considerate, mate. I'll just go straight into it. Matt,
Yeah.
I'm going to hit you with my rapid fire 5, mate.
Okay.
You ready?
I'm ready.
Right. Beer or bourbon?
I start the night with beer and then I'll finish on bourbon.
I know this one. KO or sub?
I'll go submission.
Rogan or Goldie?
Rogan. I can't stand Goldie. He's embarrassing. He's cringeworthy.
But I'm the only one. I am the only one that is a Goldie fan. DC or Jones if they fight again?
Jones. I like the bad boy side of it, and I've spoken to a couple of people. Sorry about the rapid fire. I'm slowing it down a bit, but a lot of people don't like Jones, and I never really liked him as well. But you guys like your Bevan O'Malley's and these guys that have trained with him say that he's probably one of the nicest blokes in the world and gives more time than any other fighter at Jackson. So I give him credit.
Cool. And last one. Now, don't worry about your wife. You're single. And yet, Chris Cyborg standing in front of you. And you have to marry her or you have to fight her. What are you doing?
Yeah. Wow. There's probably a couple of people that I'd test myself against, but I wouldn't fight Cyborg. I'd have to marry her. And same thing, I've heard she's a really nice girl as well. So, yeah, I'd happily marry Cyborg and I'd be the best housewife you'd ever meet.
That's funny. I had the same exact answer. So same exact answer.
Yeah.
So who do you see in all of MMA? So UFC, Bellator, let's just say, maybe even throughout all time. Who is the absolute GOAT? Who's the greatest of all time in MMA, in your opinion?
Don't say Adam Lobov.
No, mine's Anderson Silva. I have Anderson and then Daylight long past him. So I, funnily enough, had one of these little internet challenges the other day, and the thing is though about it is I find it so offensive, the way that some people argue this point. I heard someone say that, Anderson Silva wouldn't hold GSP's jockstrap. That is so incredibly insulting, and none of these fighters would talk that way.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it blows me away, but my arguments that day was that, a lot of people challenged Anderson's competition. I thought Anderson had great competition, but the guy was that good, he made them look average.
Yeah.
You look at his highlight reels and he's done everything. He's knocked people which way. He's submitted them every which way. He's defended his belt however many times. I think the guy's just incredible. There's just something about the bloke. And I've never cared for the whole, Sonnen was winning for a certain period of time and dominated this, and this. It's at the end of the day, who got his hand raised. I have Anderson Silva as the greatest of all time, and Daylight between the second. And funnily enough, I was actually lucky enough last month to sit in a seminar with George St. Pierre.
Oh, wow.
And I've never really cared for George St. Pierre. I've respected him, but that was the most phenomenal seminar that I'd sat in, learning the mindset of what this George St. Pierre was on about. That, and even he would mention that he doesn't believe he's the greatest of all time, and someone like Anderson maybe. So, getting inside GSP's mindset made me realize just how good he was of a champion. And like I said, when people say silly things about the great and they do so by insulting the next person, I've got no respect for that. But yeah, Anderson's my best, and then you've got guys like Jones, GSP, and Fedor pretty close. Where I will insult people is I probably don't have Demetrius Johnson in that conversation.
What's wrong with short people, Matt?
I'm not sure, mate. Yeah, it's not a short thing, and it's definitely not a black thing. Don't go there as well. It's I don't know. Yeah, it's just it's just his style of fighting that I've never been a fan of. I like the smaller guys, but he's just too quick. He's just too nimble. It's kind of hard to get in a difficult position when you're that small and that explosive. And I'd rather see the bigger boys. I think there's more risk in what the bigger boys do and getting caught and clipped and that sort of thing that makes you a greater fighter. I don't know. Like I say, I'm so hypocritical in my way of thinking in terms of MMA. So that argument probably had a million holes in it. But it's the passion coming out of me.
It's all your opinion, man. There is no right or wrong. Well, speaking of Silva, so in your guys' backyard, there's him and Israel Adesanya and Silva. It's happening. It's confirmed.
Yeah.
That's a huge fight. How do you see that going? Do you think it's? I think a lot of people have already written off Anderson Silva, right? They've written him off as, he's kind of like the old gunslinger. Looking to kind of get put down. He's the old dog, and they're just waiting for someone to put him down. And maybe Israel is that guy. I don't know. Or is this a redemption fight for Anderson Silva? Is this the fight that gets that fire going in him and just maybe gets his juices flowing? Maybe kind of gets him back into that old, pre Chris Weidman, Anderson Silva. Is this that fight for him?
Yeah, it's a really tough one. I think it just comes to a point where there's only so many challenges you can dodge. And in terms of how many wins in a row did Silva have? He was bound to run into a young buck like Weidman that was going to put him out.
Sure.
And especially with his game plan, it was bound to happen. So
yes.
I don't take the Weidman loss to any detriment to his GOAT status. I think that just happens when you get into your 40s and you run into this buck. What I mean? This strong buck. Something's going to happen. I kind of see the same thing happening with Izzy. It's and I've watched every single one of Silva's fights. He used to slip and dodge everything, and his counters and his striking was perfection. In terms of his accuracy. And I've noticed his last couple of fights, he doesn't quite get out of the way as many as he'd like to, and he's starting to wing a couple of his punches, and his accuracy isn't quite there. So I tend to. And I'm the biggest Silva fan. He's my favourite fighter of all time. I just don't think Izzy's kind of going to let him get away with that, But I will be there. I'm a promoter, so I normally say away versus away in a town where you don't live doesn't sell tickets. But here is New Zealand versus Brazil in Melbourne, and I'll be fine to go watch that fight.
Yeah. Pre-Weidman, I think Silva would have beaten him in his prime, but I just think Adesanya's catching him at the right moment. When
he was fighting Meyer and that's right. When he was fighting Meyer and the Asian bloke Yukumi, or what was his name again? The guy that he'd lost to by Akiyama. No, it's not. Did he fight Akiyama? The guy that he lost to by disqualification, he came back and beat, but. When he was fighting those kids and he looked phenomenal, Forrest Griffins and that, no one touches Silva in that era.
Yeah.
But right now, he's nowhere near that Chuck Liddell type level where what we saw on the weekend. He's nowhere near that.
Let's hope not.
That's right. It does only take one or two fights to get to that level. And the one thing I will say is, a lot of people are attacking this fight and say, they're trying to avoid Izzy from fighting wrestlers and keep giving him wrestlers. Why? Why do we have an awesome kid like this coming up through the ranks that we want to keep trying to find a way for him to lose?
Tall poppy syndrome.
That's it. It's massive tall poppy syndrome, and they kept doing it to Silva. He's beat all these strikers. Now let's give him, Sonnen. He beat Sonnen. Let's give him Sonnen again, and then let's give him another wrestler. Let's give him White. Why do we constantly challenge these fighters for them to lose? I want nothing more than to see Anderson Silva stand up against this Izzy bloke and for it just to be a striking clinic and to see a highlight. I don't want to see these guys' careers torn down because we had this constant obsession on finding the way to beat them. I want to see exciting fights, and this is an exciting fight for me, to the point where as soon as it got released, I bought some tickets to Melbourne. So hopefully I can get tickets to the show now, otherwise I'll be listening to it outside of the venue. But things like that. That's why I love this fight. I'm not all about wanting to try and find the antidote to beat people. We need to find the antidote on how to grow this sport and make it exciting, and this is one of those fights.
Well said, sir. 100%. I'm in agreement with you with 1,000%, man. Well, Matt, I guess let's kind of just get wrapping up. I'd like to know. I know you've gone over your whole. Maybe not your whole career, but you've given us a really a brief synopsis of how you've kind of gotten into everything and all that. But is there maybe one or two people who you feel are, I don't want to say responsible, but really helped you along the way to kind of get to where, to be in this position?
Who do you need to thank?
Yeah, definitely. So Justin Lawrence that we bought the show off. When we bought the business, there was a two-show agreement in terms of a consultancy. Where once we bought the business, he would stay on for 2 shows and help us lead the business. What are we now? We started at XFC 27. We're now going up to XFC 40. He's been involved and helped on every single show. He's brought a table to almost every single show. So not only has he stayed on and helped as that consultancy figure, but he's financially invested in the show as well by purchasing tables and sponsorship packages. Even to the point where he might be on the other side of Brisbane. I'll ring him up and say, mate, I'm stressed out about this. I'm not sure I can get through it. He'll meet me that day for lunch to get me through it and offer me some guidance. So I've really got to thank him for that continued support as well. You guys like Brian Ebersol has helped us. People like Geordie Lavers McBain, coaches that have stepped in and helped us in the past as well. I've got 2 business partners as well. My best friend, Daniel Woolard, is a business partner of mine. My father is a part of the business as well. We clash heads every now and then, but we have literally stuck together the entire time. And we always want to see this business grow and help each other out. And I definitely got to thank Dan and my father Rob for sticking by me and for me testing them all the time. And then outside of that, just the coaches and the fighters. We've had that much support it really has been an enjoyable ride. So, and then we got so many great sponsors that have looked after us as well. I'm rabbiting it on again, but this is just how passionate I get. But Earl and Casey from Fighters Worldwide Clothing have literally been with us from the start. There's never been a single thing that we've asked for them that they pushed back on and said, "Oh, look, no, not this show," or maybe the next show. They've constantly been there for us, and Brisbane Lawyers and Susie is incredible, and there are just so many good people behind this show that it would blow you away if you were able to actually see behind the scenes just how much goes on. And if one cog breaks, then the whole show breaks down. But the fact that these people stick by us the entire time is how we've been able to be so successful.
That passion's why when we had the opportunity to bring you on, mate, I jumped at it because I've heard you talk about business before, and I want to get that out there, mate. Don't forget your wife behind you too. Just
mate, yeah. As I said, even right now she's lying up in bed. She's incredibly sick, but this afternoon I've got to go and make a presentation at Integrated Martial Arts. I'm heading over to North Brisbane as well to see our new champ Aaron Tao to get some autographs on some posters and some drop off some memorabilia, and she will still pull herself out of bed to go and pick up the kids from daycare and school, wash them, clothe them, feed them, while she's sick as a dog, So I'm tough enough to live with, let alone to be a 24/7 promoter as well. So the support I get from my wife is nothing tops it. So yes, I love you and thank you very much, my wife.
Well done, buddy. Well done. Good stuff. Thanks for coming on Combat Insiders, mate. And as you know, I think you got 4 shows next year. I've penciled in hopefully 2. Hopefully my wife doesn't watch this because I haven't told her I'm returning a couple of times. But loved XFC 4 weeks ago. One of the greatest shows that I've seen, and it was definitely the loudest. So nice. Thanks from Combat Insiders, mate.
I wanted to thank you guys as well too, so going out of your way as well to do the journalism and all the reports as well, it's not an easy task and takes a lot of time off your dinner plate as well. So the sport appreciates it, XFC definitely appreciates it. And the one thing I appreciate is just the depth that you guys go to. Nothing, I always want to take things a step further, and there's nothing I hate more than seeing a journalist that'll just submit results. Or just talk about the main event, say, the main event and this happened. There's more to it than this. You know what I mean? These guys are putting so much more into it. They want more than 10 words a fight. And I love the fact just how much effort you guys go into producing that content. I would love nothing more than you guys to be incredibly successful. And thanks very much for all the help.
Thanks, buddy.
No problem, man.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks, Wayne.
Hey, man, thank you for Wayne Carl, Joshua Furs, Matt Walton. We are Combat Insiders. And that's all we got. We're out. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.